We're back with COVID Comms, and today we're talking about leadership of a remote workforce and what makes a high-performing virtual team. With the current restrictions in place, a lot of businesses are facing the need to work remotely. This is something that's been forced on a lot of teams and businesses who would not normally choose to pursue this method of operation. So there's a lot of you as leaders who are going to need to upskill in this area and take the high-performing team that you had that was co-located and translate that high performance into a virtual environment. So as an organizational psychologist, I'm trained in the applications of scientific research in the workplace. And so there's some really interesting research in this space. And I remember coming across one particular study a couple of years ago where they were looking at a whole lot of virtual teams across industry and around the world. And they were looking at what sets the really high-performing virtual teams apart from the rest. So they were analyzing the communication in this research, and they were looking at the transcripts of all the telephone conversations, of all the teleconferences and video conferencing, and then they were also looking at all the emails as well. And what they found when they analyzed the communication of these virtual teams is that the high-performing teams had two particular things present within that communication. The first one was that high-performing teams communicate about communicating. They're constantly checking in and saying, hey, do you have the right quality and quantity of communication? Do we need to talk more? Do we need to talk less? All right. Is email sufficient, or do we need to move from a Slack or a text-based communication method to being over the phone or video conferencing or whatever other method you guys can use and is available at the moment? And so they're constantly checking in saying, hey, is this level of communication working? And they're also providing opportunity for clarification, saying, hey, am I clear with my message? Do you have any questions? They're doing that at a much greater level than your average virtual team. The other thing that was present and really interesting in the communication of high-performing virtual teams is that they spent up to a third of their communication talking about stuff that was not related to work, right? It was non-related, non-work related communication. And at first this sounds a bit odd, but when you think about it and you think about a co-located team that's all operating out of the one space, the high-performing teams, they spend a whole lot of time getting to know each other and building relationships. And they talk about a whole lot of stuff outside of the workplace, and they show a level of interest in the lives of their teammates. And this is essentially the same thing that's happening in a virtual context with these high-performing virtual teams. And so I put this into practice a number of years ago when I first came across this research. I was in the position of director for a particular program, and I had a virtual assistant over in Manila. And so I started in my emails to her. I was asking a whole lot of stuff around her life outside of work, what was going on in her city on the weekends, some of the festivals that were going on. And it was a really interesting thing. One, she showed a whole lot of appreciation at the fact that I was not just talking about work, that I was taking interest in her as a person, but the speed that she would turn around my requests actually went up. And so her performance went up. And so there's my kind of little personal testimony around the application of this research. So if you find yourself leading virtual teams for the first time, I really encourage you, be intentional about checking in. Check in, particularly in the early stages, a lot more often than what you would think is necessary. Check in and say, hey, is this the right method of communication? Are you getting enough? Do we need less? What does it look like? Over time, as you guys get more used to the virtual environment, you're going to have to check in less. But right at this point in time, more is better. Okay. And the other thing is check in about non-work related topics, and see how people are going, what's going on for them. And try and get some of that relationship building, which is going to build trust and therefore commitment to the team, and just do that intentionally over the phone, all right, or over the video conference, whatever method you are using. Hey, if this content's been valuable for you, tell me, what's the one thing that's been the most valuable that stood out to you? Put it in the comments below. And please, if you think it's relevant, share it to, particular people or amongst your network. There's a whole lot of managers who are leading remote workforces for the first time, and they need to hear these tips as well. So take the opportunity, build your skill set as a leader, translate the high performance that your team had into the virtual context, and it's going to position yourself and your team to thrive throughout this whole environment. Stay tuned for more COVID comms, and throughout it all, lead well.